In 1998, Dr. Stephen M. Greer resigned his post as chairman of emergency medicine at Caldwell Memorial Hospital in North Carolina to spend all his time and energy on exposing a massive corporate government cover-up of extraterrestrial contact that has been kept under wraps for decades.
With so many conspiracy theories out there, it's hard to keep track of them all. Welcome to What We Know, where we try to uncover the histories and mysteries of the world by presenting all different theories out there, and the only narrative we push is this. Here's what we know, make up your own mind.
Why does this matter? It's not so much the dozens of deceased aliens secreted at Fort Huachuca in Arizona, Greer says, or even the super-secret radionic technology that took the life of the assistant and two colleagues and nearly killed him. It's not even the prototypes of UFOs that roamed the southwest-friendly skies, looking so much like real ET craft that it's hard to tell the difference. That is technically your tax dollars at work. What's important, Greer insists, is that if the government came clean with what it knows about ET technology, we could upgrade the planet. Not only would we wean ourselves off oil and other fossil fuels, but we could scrap nuclear power and implement clean, cheap, safe energy that any country or culture could afford. One problem: that might weaken or topple the corporate government power structure that controls our fuel and energy systems, mass produces war weapons, and keeps a light rein on the global economy. So how to shine a light on a shadowy consortium that promotes war while fostering scarcity, making gas prices astronomical? Based in Crozet, Virginia, Greer's disclosure project has convinced hundreds of insiders, including military brass and CIA ops, to defy non-disclosure pacts. They have coughed up documents and signed testimonials. Greer's got it all. In fact, he gave Peter Jennings producers access to these bombshell revelations for the ABC special on UFOs that aired last spring. But as the good doctor found out, you can't give this stuff to the mainstream media and expect it to air on prime time. They won't let us do it, a senior producer told Greer by phone. I said, "Who's they?" Greer recalls, and he said, "Dr. Greer, you know who they are." And click, he hung up. So why not get these documents to the President of the United States? Been there, done that. Hillary and Bill spent hours poring over them, Greer claims a close friend of the Clintons reported, adding that when Clinton took office, he wanted two questions answered: who killed Jack Kennedy and what's going on with the UFOs? It didn't take long for Clinton to realize, says Greer's friend, that he had a much better chance of completing his term if he followed his own don't ask, don't tell policy. In 2001, Greer held a press conference at which many witnesses came forward, but it was eclipsed by 9/11. Since then, he's gathered more insiders willing to reveal what the government wants. So if you are tired of holding hand with the Saudis, or you think it's time Earthlings had access to that cool anti-gravity technology that allowed UFOs to dodge our weapons, check out disclosureproject.org. It's about your pocketbook, not about little green men, says Greer, who wants to replace fossil fuel and nuclear power with the advanced energy systems used by ETs. Where do you get that? Just ask the government, Greer replies. They have had it for 50 years. Washington may not want to listen, but we certainly do. Hustler, when did you see your first UFO? Dr. Stephen M. Greer. Back in the early 1960s, when I was 8 or 9, some neighborhood boys and I saw a disc-shaped, windowless object that hovered, silent, then simply vanished. My parents said, "That's very nice," and ignored it. But I knew what I had seen, and it was life-changing. What made you leave medicine to focus on the UFO cover-up full-time? In 1990, I learned that NATO and the Belgian Air Force were tracking an enormous triangular craft about 800 feet in diameter, and it reignited my interest. I went there and actually saw the F-16 fighter jet radar tape of a massive UFO hovering, then accelerating at a several thousand miles per hour, way outside the envelope of what a man-made object could do. Have you seen a UFO at close range? My research team and I had one of these massive triangles came down right over our car. It was vibrating on top and sounded like an enormous transformer, a deep, low-frequency hum. The most dramatic thing we have seen in a near landing in England in 1992, where we had a 100-foot diameter disc in front of us, about 10 feet above the ground, signaling and communicating. There were people on board. Has your team ever established contact with an ET spacecraft? In the early 1990s, a BBC recording crew picked up a series of beeping tones. We recorded that and we fed it back out. For all we know, it's their trash compactor, but we figured that if they see humans sending their signal back to them, they will identify it as a communication. In Pensacola, Florida, We signaled with high-powered lights and lasers, and they signaled back to us. We have this on videotape. We go to areas where these objects have been seen, so we are not just sitting in our backyard. Are UFO hostile? There's not a shred of evidence that these UFOs or the life forms behind them are a threat or hostile to us. There is a lot of evidence that some rogue military projects have done foolish and dangerous things that have been aggressive toward them, as the government concealed ET vehicles and bodies. They have several dozen extraterrestrial vehicles and dozens of deceased life forms of various races. Some are stored in an underground facility near Fort Huachuca in Arizona. Are secret programs developing ET technology? Yes, we can prove through the testimony of dozens of witnesses that there have been covert programs that have studied and figured out the energy and propulsion system behind UFOs. We are talking about a whole new type of physics that would enable humans to generate energy from what's called the quantum vacuum. How does this energy work? There is a baseline level of energy that's in all space around us, not outer space, but the space in this room. It's estimated that every cubic centimeter of space here has enough energy to run the entire Earth for a day. This can be tapped. Some scientists are trying to fabricate motors that extract energy from the quantum vacuum, the energy that surrounds us. You mean the space between atoms? Correct, the zero-point energy. I've actually seen one of these working. Of course, the inventor has been threatened. Dr. Eugene Mallov, who was murdered in May 2004, and I were working on this. I am carrying it forward, but it's high risk. More on Dr. Mallov and cold fusion technology. How close are we to harnessing this energy? We are fairly close. There are people with proof of principle things, but no products for sale yet. Right now, we are working with an inventor who has created energy from this quantum vacuum in the hundreds of watts range, enough to run several things in our home. We can also demonstrate the anti-gravity effects of high voltage system under certain controlled experiments. An electronic field makes something fairly weightless. We are working with a man who's done very advanced anti-gravity work. The colonel who classified it is willing to declassify it for us to take forward. You have made an object weightless. We have seen this done in a lab. The techniques for tapping this energy have already been fully developed within rogue and covert programs. Lockheed's Gunworks has enormous ships zipping around that are powered by anti-gravity. A lot of the UFOs sighted in the high desert of California and Utah are actually man-made prototypes. Who else is making these phony UFOs? The companies involved are SAIC, TRW, Northrop, Raytheon, and EG&G. We have enormous intelligence on this. I know the buildings where this stuff is going on. This needs to come out so people know the truth. Does our tax money support these secret programs, or are they privately funded? Both. There's private corporate funding as well as what's called black budget sources. I met with Senator Robert C. Birdstaff in 1994, his senior investigator and chief counsel for the Senate Appropriations Committee, for which he was chairman at the time, told me that this stuff was real. They could not penetrate this black world dealing with UFOs. At that time, between $40 billion and $100 billion a year was going into these projects, and they could not trace the money. Why are these programs kept secret? Fossil fuel and the nuclear power industries would be made redundant by these technologies that very elegantly extract energy from the quantum vacuum or zero-point energy field. We have a 7 trillion part of the world economy dealing with the fossil fuels and conventional transportation. If this information comes out, aside from people realizing that we are not alone in the universe, they will quickly see that we don't need oil, coal, or central utilities. It's all about maintaining the homeostasis and status quo of the world macroeconomic and power dynamic. How would zero-point energy transform the global economy? It would replace everything. You wouldn't need oil, but the 30 trillion a year global economy would quickly grow to 200 trillion because there would be clean, sustainable energy, and manufacturing and transportation would be very inexpensive. 80% of the world's population lives in amazing poverty, and it would lift that. It would revolutionize the planet. People talk about the peace dividend, but it's time for a space dividend. Who's hiding these advanced energy systems from the public? The entity that runs this stuff is the world's largest RICO. They used to be called MJ Majestic 12, but the last term I heard was PI 40. It's not one society. They are sweeping conspiracy theories about the Masons, Bilderbergers, Trilateral Commission, and Council of Foreign Relations. I know people in all these entities, and most of them couldn't find their ass in a well-lighted room. It's much more prosaic and nuanced than that. Why do they feel threatened? it would decentralize power. Right now, the centralized financial and oil system is so integrated with the way the world runs. We have testimony about that the agenda is from peoples who have been on the inside. Who's in this covered group? There's a committee of 200 to 300 people who are on the policy board for this issue. Admiral Bobby Ray Inman, who went from head of the National Security Agency to the board of SAIC, which is one of the crown jewels of this covert entity, is a member. So is Admiral Harry Train. George Bush Sr., Cheney, and Rumsfeld are involved, as is the Lee Tenstein banking family. The Mormon corporate empire has an enormous interest in this subject. They have much more power than the White House of the Pentagon over this issue, and there are secret cells within the Vatican. Have you met with any of these people? There are factions within this group, and I have met with some of the good guys. People think that it's a monolithic conspiracy, but they are wrong. About 40 to 50% of people involved in these super secret projects want this stuff out. They know we are running out of oil, China is industrializing, and the polar ice caps are melting, and they know that if this advanced ET technology was announced today, it would take 10 to 20 years to get it into widespread application to avert an economic, strategic, geopolitical, and environmental catastrophe. They see that and want to fix it, but they are still a minority. They are more enlightened, but it's the ruthless ones who rule. Was CIA Director William Colby involved at some point? Was his accidental death in 1996 connected to your work? Bill Colby was defecting from the super secret group, and he was assassinated because he was going to transfer some hard technologies operating devices and $50 million in funding to us. We knew that with my kind of willpower and connections, I would have gotten that out to the world. He was found floating down the Potomac River the week he was going to meet with my closest friend. They made an example of him. In fact, Colby's best friend, a colonel who set up the meeting, said it was absolutely a hit. Even his wife said on CNN, you know, it was strange because he could never go out canoeing in a flooded, rain-swollen Potomac River at night and leave the house open and the coffee maker and the computer on. That's not like Bill Colby at all. Colby's widow stopped short of calling it murder. Someone may have said, play along or your children are next. I mean, these people are thugs. Has your life been threatened? Colby was killed. My right-hand assistant, a member of Congress who was working very closely with us, and myself all got a deadly type of cancer in the same month. Different kinds. I don't talk about this publicly much because people say, come on, but it absolutely can be done. It was done and everyone died but me. I was devastated and it took me 18 months to recover. You are saying the UFO cover-up conspirators can target people from a distance and produce cancer? Yes, Dr. Tom Bearden's books about the scalar electromagnetic weapon system explain how longitudinal waveforms can be a carrier for this kind of thing. They can get it down to a cell, to your DNA. It's all resonance. We have had this technology since the 1950s. Do you have witnesses willing to step forward and reveal what they know about this massive cover-up? We have about 450 military and government insiders who have been present during rather undeniable events, including the study of these energy and propulsion systems. Do you have documents? We have a number of smoking gun documents, including a wiretap of Marilyn Monroe the day before she died, which has never been declassified. She was threatening to hold a press conference to tell the world what Jack Kennedy had told her during pillow talk about having seen debris from an extraterrestrial vehicle at what the document calls a secret air base. She was murdered for this. Why isn't the mainstream media covering this? The biggest problem is the media. If a congressman starts looking into this, they get pillared and ridiculed by the media. There's a CIA document from 1991 that clearly states that the agency had contracts or resources at every major media outlet to kill, spin, or stop stories. It's a canon that we have a free press. Also, people can't wrap their minds around it. A former editor at the Boston Globe told me, this is just too far out, and even if it's true, we'd never run it because it's associated with tabloids and the lunatic French. And yet these people put 24/7 coverage on what I call the blowjob herd around the world. And I can say that in Hustler, the media will spend millions for satellite trucks and on-site reporters to cover freak shows like the O.J. Simpsons or Michael Jackson trials. Why is the UFO issue so urgent? It's about how we live our lives. Aside from cleaning up the environment, it extricates us from our dependency on oil, gets us out of the Middle East mess, and saves the average American household thousands of dollars a year in heating, utilities, and gas for their cars. And globally, it frees up enormous amounts of economic potential. This would be the tide that raises all ships. How do you keep going in the face of so much mainstream resistance? It's a sort of Promethean challenge. Lawrence Rockefeller once told me, "It's wonderful that you are going to do this, and it's so important. But I'm afraid you are going to be the court jester, that people won't take this seriously." And I said, well, we at least have to try. What do our extraterrestrial visitors want? I think they are waiting for us to grow up and quit destroying Earth and each other. That may be the entry requirement for joining the interplanetary club, and we are just not there yet. That's the biggest challenge for the human race. Are you hopeful about the future? I am very hopeful. In fact, I have no doubt that the outcome will be peaceful, that these technologies will completely rehabilitate Earth's fortune and environment and eliminate poverty, and it will happen in our lifetimes. But the question is, how much madness has to go on between now and then?
If you enjoy this video and want to see more like it, please consider subscribing to us and hitting the like button. Feel free to write a comment below and suggest which theory you want to see next. If you'd like to further support this channel, please consider joining. Our membership link will be found in the description box below. We appreciate your support, and as always, thanks for watching.